I do believe in equality under law. I think it can be justified through Enlightenment principles without an explicit feminist sort of lens to it. But I do believe in equality under the law. But I think actually the way we talk about these kinds of differences always puts us on the defensive. It's always putting us on the back foot, right? So the left, the liberal left, or even, let's say, the post-liberal left will say, look at these differences in average pay between men and women, right? Therefore, there must be discrimination. And the argument you kind of alluded to, and I think a lot of people make, and make well, right? Christina Hoff Sommers has made this argument really, really well and effectively, but it's already on the defensive, right? We say, well, if you account for the different majors that men and women choose, if you account for hours worked, if you account for years in the workforce, if you account for even hours worked within full-time, right? Men tend to work more hours even in what's classified as full-time than women do, right? If you account for aggressive negotiation, for higher salaries and better benefits, right? If you do all these things, then yes, we can like theoretically equalize these numbers and say that we do actually pay for equal work, we pay equally. I would flip that around and say, why is that a bad thing? Why is it a bad thing that women make choices differently than men? In fact, we should expect, because women are deeply different than men, and those differences are more than superficial, we should expect major differences when we're looking at statistical averages. Now, I want to be clear, I don't believe that there should be like legal barriers to females advancing in certain professions, right? Although I think there are a few exceptions to that. For example, combat in the military. There are some situations in which I think women are ill-suited to, and even those who succeed really well may have, like breaking up an all-male force may have social consequences within a unit that even if there is a rare woman who is able to take the physical rigors of combat, that it may not be worth it for military readiness. But that's the exception, right? I don't think generally there should be a law that prevents, for example, women from going to law school, which is something that was addressed by the Supreme Court several decades ago. But I do think that we're always on the back foot when we are defensive about these gaps and differences. They will always exist across averages, even if there are individual exceptions to them. And to me, as a conservative, I see it as my role in the public discourse to point out that these gaps are actually beautiful and good. They're not something that we should be defensive about or have to explain away, although I think there's value in explaining it once we're already having this conversation. But I think as a conservative, my role is to say, these are fine. In fact, we should expect these. And if we were to see those gaps narrow, I would very much worry that there were too many women, more than they are already, pushing themselves to succeed exactly like men, instead of thinking more deeply about what it might look like for a woman to succeed versus a man. And I'm not talking about something totally surface level, like, a woman succeeds when she gets married at 22 and has 6 kids. Like that's, okay. I think that's too didactic and too, I don't want to become a caricature, but for example, we should expect women to even pursue careers that are more interpersonal, because we have a ton of neurobiological research and social science research that shows that women are more satisfied by interpersonal relationships, and men are more satisfied by building things. So this is sort of what James Damore alluded to, right? There are more men who are willing to sit in a cubicle for 12 hours a day, not interacting with other people, coding. That is fine. That's how men built a lot of civilization. But it is, on average, less fulfilling. It makes women less happy. That's not to say there aren't great female coders who love their jobs, but we should expect that difference because of how we're different. We should expect women generally to get more fulfillment out of interpersonal relationships, and we shouldn't shame women who do get more fulfillment in a more traditional feminine way, which I think is currently what we're doing. And I think that's producing a lot of burned out women from leaning in and from forcing themselves basically to behave as men, both in the professional and the personal arena. And I just think it doesn't work for the majority of women because we are, on average, we are very different from men.
There